I'm JP Cole.
And I'm Julie Cole.
And we are the co-owners of Cole Wellness, which is a wellness center located in Irmo, South Carolina. We have a unique multidisciplinary approach to treatment in which we incorporate psychotherapy, health coaching, personal training, and in the last few years, we've recently added massage therapy, chiropractic, and psychiatry as well.
Yep. And we're just welcoming you to our Build Your Best Life series on our Cole Wellness podcast. So thanks for being with us, and we look forward to offering you some really good content.
What's up, everybody? I'm JP Cole.
And I'm Julie Cole.
Welcome back to the Cole Wellness Build Your Best Life series podcast.
Yeah.
This looks like this is going to be the last week in this series.
Yeah.
It's week 10.
Yep.
Can't believe that it's been 10 weeks already.
10 weeks. 10 weeks of suiting up and showing up.
Yep. Thanks to Scott for encouraging us to do this.
Right.
He's been a huge help.
That's right.
And it's actually been fun.
It has.
I don't know if y'all are enjoying it, but we are enjoying it. So, enlightened self-interest, I'm having a good time.
Yeah.
Let's see. We always start off every week with gratitude, and today's piece of gratitude is sunshine.
Oh, God, yes.
100% sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
I'm so tired of it raining, and I'm grateful to be able to step outside and get a little bit of it, even though it's going to rain more this weekend.
That's right.
While we're camping.
Yeah.
And I'm going anyway. I don't care.
That's right. We're going to double up, have our ponchos and our rain jackets at Dollywood.
Yep.
It's not like we've never done it before. We went for an entire day in ponchos and rain jackets there.
And
8 hours. Yeah.
And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
And there were no lines.
That's right.
There was a secret to Dollywood there.
Yeah.
Wear a poncho and deal with it.
They run everything while it's still raining.
Yeah.
I mean, everything still runs.
Yep.
Yep. Unless
Although
there's
it
lightning.
does hurt your face at 100 miles an hour on a roller coaster.
Yeah.
It feels like you're getting pelted by hail.
But I will say by the end of the day, when I couldn't even go under my poncho and get my hands dry anymore, I was done.
It was worn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had been tapped out. But we've been all day in the rain. Actually, the first 3 times we ever went to Dollywood, it was supposed to rain all day. And the first 2 times we went, it didn't rain. It drizzled the second day a little bit. And we spent all day at Dollywood literally by ourselves. I have pictures of my kids in like main areas of Dollywood, and you can see 3 other people in the entire picture. And then the third day, we just toughed it out in the rain all day. And that was, we did it.
So enough about Dollywood. What do you guys think about Dollywood?
We love
Dollywood.
Dollywood.
And let us know.
Hey, Dolly, if you hear this.
Yeah. Yeah.
We plug you a lot. Yeah. We like Dollywood.
But for real, the value of sunshine and the importance of it in our mental and physical health, like it just is an essential part that we oftentimes don't get enough of being indoors. And I can't help but notice the genuine elevation of my mood and life when I'm just getting a little bit more sunlight and sunshine. So the opportunity that we have today, if you get a chance, get outside. I don't know when you're listening to this. It's probably raining again, but at least today it's nice out. So.
And we recognize there are people who would just pray to have this much rain, but it's old. It's been raining here for weeks. Weeks. Our grass is dead. Our kids are going to be able to search for 4-leaf clovers because the clover has literally taken over our yard. I mean, it has taken over our yard. So.
And the last thing I'll say about sunshine, not making any medical recommendations here, but if you were to happen to look online and follow some physicians who talk about the value of vitamin D, especially at this time, with all the colds going around and the benefits that it has. Yeah. So take a look at that.
Yeah, there's, I'll just, on YouTube, there's a channel called MedCram, 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 and they're doing a daily update on the COVID-19, and he actually is following a lot of active studies on what's been helpful and disrupting the transmission of it. And so vitamin D was definitely one thing that they covered. They talked about zinc.
Just a helpful tool.
Yeah. So,
it's not going to cure it.
No.
We're not making any recommendations, but we do recommend that you
check it out.
Listen to a doctor.
Yeah.
Anyways, so sunshine is valuable.
Sure.
That's one of the easiest, freest ways to get vitamin D.
Well, and we also think about conversion. It's like it's actually essential for the conversion of vitamin D. We can supplement it all day long. But
if you don't get sunlight.
There's something that happens at a cellular level when you're in nature that you can't replicate. You can't. So, yeah. Go team.
And that's our soapbox.
That's right.
Our first soapbox of the day.
That's right.
All right, so we are entering step 3 of our original plan. When we started this content series, it was about the Build Your Best Life series. Sure. We had 3 steps to it. The first step was figuring out where you want to be.
Yep.
And we talked about SMART goal setting and visualizing your goal. What else did we talk about? I don't remember that last one.
Talked about imposter syndrome.
Imposter syndrome.
We talked about some of the things you contend with along the way, right? We talked about transparency and accountability.
And then we moved on to step 2, which is having a deep and meaningful understanding of where you're at currently.
Sure. Where you are currently. And there we talked about how to assess our physical health, mental health. Last week we talked about spiritual health. This week we move into step 3, which is how do you create a plan, a program, or a map to reach your goals. So we keep going back to that metaphor of if we're taking a trip, we got to know 3 points, where we're at, where we're going, and we have to have a plan in order to get there. And for me, we've kind of been creating in general, loosely, we've been doing step 3 all along by figuring out where we're at. It's kind of like there are several different ways to get to wherever you want to go. And throughout this process, we've been beginning to take a look at what are some potential barriers, what are some things that have been successful in the past. And now we're just going to take the time to actually create a plan for ourselves. Right.
That we're going to try to adhere to.
Honoring the principle of equifinality, right? Which is there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yep.
Because I started out the blog this week and I talked a little bit about how we sat down the first week and we kind of came up with a content outline, and but we left ourselves space to do something. Oh, I just somehow closed that. We left ourselves space to adjust along the way, right, as needed. And so we did. We adjusted along the way, including switching 2 of the steps, right, and adding in content that we weren't planning on adding in, and just kind of let the evidence kind of drive us along the way too. We adjusted some of these pieces based on feedback, and so I think that's an important piece.
For sure. So today's podcast is just basically a summation of what we've already talked about, but then we also want to give some pointers to what are some concrete things that you can do to help you come up with a plan, whether or not it's a physical change you want to make, a mental, emotional change, or a spiritual change that you want to make. The first thing that I thought about was that you have to write it down.
Yeah.
If you fail to plan, you're planning to fail kind of a thing. And it has to be documented in some way. To me, that also includes sharing it with another human being. I'm really good about setting goals for myself and then not communicating them to anybody. And then that way, when I don't reach them, I don't have to admit it to anyone that I failed at it.
That's like, so we'll use a couple of tangible examples, right? So I think about when you tell your story and you talk about, the times that you woke up with a commitment to quit drinking that day. I'm not going to drink again. And then what happened?
So that was every day between 1998 and 2005. I'm never going to do it again.
Right. And then?
Well, then I would go to work.
Yeah.
And it would be a really long day at Texas Roadhouse or Longhorn or whatever fine establishment had me hired at the time.
Right.
And after working 3, 4, 5 hours, I was exhausted and realized that, anybody who works that hard deserves one drink.
Right.
And so I'd have a drink.
And the truth is that some of it's not accurately assessing where you are, which is the truth is that for you at that time in your life, one drink wasn't something you could do.
No.
Right. Just like a lot of people can't have one cookie or one donut or one, interaction. We've been watching Parks and Recreation again, and I think about, Ron with the Tammys, that's my experience with alcoholism was Tammy 1 and Tammy 2. If you haven't seen that show, I'm really sorry, but there's this, he can always tell when they're in the building.
You can smell them.
Yeah, he's like, they're here. She's here. Which one? Tammy 1. Yeah. And so, the experience was is that, it's just this piece of.
I didn't have a plan.
Yeah. That's it.
I just made a commitment to myself and sometimes to other people that I'm just never going to do that thing again. But I didn't say what I was going to replace 23 hours of my day with.
And you didn't change anything.
And I didn't change anything. I just said, I'm just going to stop doing that.
That's right.
And it didn't work.
That's right. Until it did.
Until it did.
Yeah.
The end.
But it's important because one of the things you have in here is be accountable with someone. And I think that when we talk about that, we underscore or minimize the fact that for so many people, having a strong accountability network, not even just one person, but a network, but definitely at least one person we're being truthful and honest and transparent with along the way is a key ingredient.
Absolutely. I hold fast to this idea that until we, this principle of confessing to each other, confessing with your mouth, like until I speak something to another human being, it's not real.
Right.
Like it doesn't really exist. It's just floating around in my mind.
Well, and we can also, it can shift slowly, right? Which is why when we made the promise to not ever do that again, slowly but surely that got chipped away in our brain because of the rationalizations or the, justifications that our brain comes up with. And I think that it's really important to understand when we talk about rationalization and justification, there's no shame in that because we actually know that there's a neurobiological process that happens when we're talking about behaviors, when we're talking about substances, when we're talking about things we ingest, those kinds of things, they actually change the way our brain works.
Yeah.
So part of the accountability is being accountable to changing our brain to a new thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I really want everybody to understand that those thoughts aren't laziness.
No.
Or a lack of motivation.
No.
Or anything like that. Those thoughts are actually a normal part. I'm going to look at the camera really hard for this one. Like those thoughts are a part of the natural neurobiological process that happens. We actually habituate our brain to those things because things like behaviors like sex and relationships and things like that, gambling,
all the fun ones,
food, those things actually create novel experiences in our brain that cannot be replicated a lot of the times.
Spikes in neurochemical soup that you can't find any other way.
Same thing with drugs, alcohol, that kind of stuff.
These are a few of my favorite things.
That's what happened with Ron with Tammy.
But being accountable with somebody is essential.
Yeah. And I actually had somebody reach out to me a couple weeks ago and say, I'd really like to see y'all dig in further about this accountability, this concept of accountability. Not only how do we set ourselves up to build in reasonable accountability, but also how do we serve as accountability partners for people who we love and who are trying to make changes and support them. So I did what all good people for podcasts do is I invited her to come on next week. So she'll be on next week talking with us. My friend Mary Dell Hayes, who is a nonprofit consultant and and so she'll tell you more of her story next week. But I invited her to come, and so it'll be me and her next week.
Yep.
Yeah, that'll be our first non-Cole guest.
Non-Cole guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, like me or you. Yeah.
I picked up on that.
Uh-huh.
So, and I got these out of order, but I would say at this point, also consider a coach, a mentor, a sponsor, a counselor. It's helpful to have somebody who's unemotionally affected or objective in this, like who doesn't have an emotional buy-in, or a person that you would be likely to not be fully honest with because you're worried about what they think about you.
Or who might not be fully honest with you because they're worried about what
because
you
there's
think
an investment. They don't want to hurt your feelings. Yeah. So as much as friends and family members can be helpful, it's also important to consider other options, whether that's a financial investment to do that or not.
Sure.
It's just important to have an unemotionally affected, objective person that you can be accountable with and not feel judged.
Sure. And
that can be openly honest with you, that you're not going to get triggered by.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I was going to say with our loved ones and our friends, sometimes we have these level of interactions, and when we make changes, it changes the level of interaction, and so we change, and that whether people are excited for us or not, or happy for us or not, there's some level of fear that comes into that for other people too. It's just instinct and human nature.
Yeah.
So,
and there's a lot of options there, but just, I like the idea of if it's a physical thing, you can get a coach or a trainer or online coaching, or you can find a mentor. I mean, a lot of people are willing to mentor for free, whether it's for business or spiritual discipleship, or a lot of people are willing to give their time. If you're in the 12-step community, it's essential to have a sponsor that you trust, that you can share anything with.
Sure.
Pro tip, find one that's sicker than you, that's more messed up than you. That way, when you tell them things, they're like, "Oh yeah, it's no big deal."
That's not really good advice, but I'm kidding.
Yeah, it is. It's great advice. Or get a counselor, therapist
who was sicker than you, maybe.
Who was sicker? Yeah. Let's clarify that. That's really important. I realize where you're going with that. Yeah.
I'm not.
I guess my point was just that it's hard to entrust your truths and your journey with somebody that you feel
might judge it,
mm-hmm. or look down upon it, or be scared by it, right? So it's important to have somebody that can kind of roll with it.
Right. And you also, it's hard when somebody gets overly emotionally reactive to it.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because I've had some people share some really, really tragic, terrible things, and I can sit with them in that and empathize, right? But I can't go down in the hole with them.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. So plug for therapists. That's ideally what they're capable of doing. You know? A good therapist is able to sit with you in that and not go down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And sometimes we can be affected by it. There have been times when people shared something that was hurting them and I got teary with them, or that they got excited.
Oh, for sure.
I got excited, but I think that there's, over empathizing is, can actually shut you down.
Yeah, for sure. And it's dangerous for the counselor or therapist too. Mm-hmm. Okay, so consistently review your SMART goals was another thing. We talked about those in one of the first few weeks, but it's important to remember, all right, what is the specific thing that I want to change? How am I measuring it?
Yeah.
Is it attainable? Is it relevant? Is it timely?
Yeah.
And then the other example that is eluding me at this point.
Yeah.
But, you can look back through our stuff and find it.
Yeah, it's constantly, just kind of, and we had talked about kind of setting markers of time along the way. So for a lot of people, that might mean, I know the scale isn't something that everybody can jump onto, but like for some people, they want to weigh every day so they understand the fluctuations. Some people want to weigh once a week. Some people want to weigh once a month just to get a marker of where they are.
Yeah.
Some people use tape measures. Some people use their energy level. Some people use, there's lots of things, but the bigger thing is setting a time. So if somebody's doing therapy with me and they come in once a week, that's our check-in. Mm-hmm. We're checking in, we're looking for improvements. I had somebody recently who I could definitely see was making improvements in behavior change, but their depression wasn't subsiding. So we facilitated a referral to a psychiatrist to manage the depression, and then we're working on skills, but that is something that went beyond the scope of what we could deal with in the office. She couldn't will the depression away. Yeah. It was something that she has a history of, and that was not she was not benefiting fully because she needed help with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And to me, that's one of the important reasons to assess often, so that you can be able to decipher, all right, when do I need to be more aggressive with my plan?
Sure.
Or when do I need to take a detour? We'll talk about that in a minute. But one of the things I work regularly with my clients on is not that I'm going to see them every day or more than once a week or more than twice a month sometimes. It's about what can they do on a regular basis to assess where is their depression, so that when we do have those check-ins or anxiety or substance use or whatever we're dealing with, so that when they do come in, they can say, is this working or is it not? Instead of just, it's a snapshot. If I see somebody for one Friday a month and all I get is that snapshot, they need to be able to figure out what are the other days feeling like, so that they can make an educated decision for themselves about, do I need medication?
Sure.
Do I need something else?
Well, and that goes with what we talked about last week with spiritual health, but also mental and emotional health. Like for a lot of people, that's identifying what their value set is, and then reviewing that at the end of the day, and saying, was I consistent with so if it's I want to do these check in on these behaviors, like I want to work out, I want to walk, I want to focus on this aspect of my nutrition for my depression, right? And and I need to minimize certain commitments. Then at the end of the day, we review that and say, and so I can't help you if you're coming even once a week. I can't, I don't have that kind of power, and you don't have that kind of power, but they have that kind of power, and so our job is to empower people to so that's a realistic check-in. I challenge people to to identify specifically what it is that they want to work on, and then look at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Something that we learned in the mutual aid society community, the 12-step recovery community, is that, reviewing our day at the end of the day, to be honest with ourselves about where we were consistent with what we're trying to live towards, move towards, or whether we weren't,
Yeah, and that was the next thing I was going to bring up, was that 1 day, 1 week at a time approach is effective in all areas of life, not just recovery. And I think it's essential to have some form of small discipline where you can check in more regularly like that. We're not guaranteed tomorrow. We're not guaranteed any other day. It does me very little to only check in occasionally on something, because I'm not getting a good picture of what's really going on with it. Plus, it feels much more manageable when I focus on, all right, what are the things that I need to do today? It's like bite-sized chunks.
Absolutely. Yeah. No doubt.
This one's important for me, that part of the, back to the metaphor of the trip, part of the path needs to be like, what are the rewards? What are the stops that we're going to take? When are we going to sightsee? Like, when do we rest and grab some food? Like, what are the rewards along the way, and how can we keep them in the same trajectory as we're going? Like, I always think about diets and cheat meals when it comes to this. It does not make any sense to me to have your reward along the way be something that's in the complete opposite direction of what you're trying to accomplish.
Right.
If I'm trying to save money, then wasting money is not a good reward for having saved money. Or, being successfully married for a time, is the reward for that isn't that I get to go have an affair. You know what I mean? Like, it makes no sense whatsoever. So it's important that, how can we set rewards along the way to keep us motivated? And so instead of, for a physical health journey, it's like, instead of, and we've gotten much better about this. It used to be cheat meals and where do we want to go to splurge somewhere. And now it's more like, let's go get a new pair of shoes.
Sure.
Let's splurge on gym clothes or new equipment or a new pair of shoes or something, camping wise, that's, enjoyable for our family. That's in the same trajectory as the goals that we're trying to do, and not, let's go eat a cheeseburger and hate ourselves for 2 hours afterwards.
Well, and it's recently we were like, well, it's something we want to do, so we decided to get an Airbnb and go for a really long hike. So we went and did that. And that was a reward. That's not a reward for everybody. It was a reward for us. We got out in the woods.
For our anniversary. Yeah. It was awesome.
And the funny thing about it is, sometimes we, because we're coexisting in space a lot, we're learning to communicate differently, and when to talk about heavy stuff and when not to. And, it's an interesting dynamic to be around each other all the time in a lot of ways, and why are you smiling?
What are you really saying?
No, but I'm saying, I love it when we get out on the hikes, so because a lot of times we'll be wrestling with something, some of it maybe content here, or trying to work out a process, or, I'm going through a whole lot of, this has been a new evolution of identity formation for me, and I'm wrestling with that a little bit. And sometimes when we're in the hustle and bustle of the day, the reward for us sometimes with that is too, as we get out there, and when we're there and we're trudging away on a hike, and we're not face to face in the stress of the day, the reward is that we actually open up. Yeah. And we connect. Yep. And we're able to really talk through some stuff that maybe we weren't able to talk through before we got out there. And so that actually becomes its own reinforcement.
Absolutely.
And I know that doesn't seem to, but for me, that's a reward. So I don't like long hikes, but we've been doing more long hikes because that's the reward for me, is that we get to go and just spend connected time together. Yeah. And our kids connect too. Yeah. I actually did a blog post on my personal blog. I'm shameless. Should I do it? It's weird. What? A plug. Scott saying, yeah. So I created a Julie Cole Facebook personality page, partially because I write, and I have had a
Julie
blog.
Has multiple personalities.
Yeah, but I like to write, and I have these moments. I'm trying to be more consistent with it, so I created it so it can be like a blog. Like traditional Blogspot blogs don't kind of get traction like they used to. It's so I created that, and I actually wrote yesterday about about some experiences that I've had with nature and the wildness of the wilderness and stuff. And so I'll be putting that on there in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
But, it's this piece where also our kids are connected. We get out in that space and the reward is that we just get to go and be creative. Like we go on a vacation somewhere else and we're kind of trying to decide what we want to do and plan it out. We decide to go camping. We just show up and the adventure kind of unfolds a lot of the times. Like we don't necessarily think it out. We go to the park office and they tell us about a hike or a cool historical thing. And then we just go.
Yeah.
It's an adventure, Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that becomes.
We'll talk about it. We talked earlier today about potentially diving into content around communicating in a marriage and things like that. But I know for me, like it's helpful when you talk about us connecting better when we're doing something like, and I'm trying to steer clear of men of like all men do this.
Right.
For me, when I'm doing a task, I feel like more connected.
Yeah.
So it's easier for me to not have my brain all over the place. Like when we're hiking as a family and we have an actual journey that we're on, it's easier for me to be in the present moment because I'm doing something. Whereas sometimes it's difficult. Like I think about sometimes I feel more connected to you when we communicate at times like that, when we're in the woods walking,
no doubt,
than I would even in a therapy session.
Sure.
Because my mind is all over the place trying to figure things out, whereas it's almost like it distracts a little bit of my mind and allows me to focus on the present moment.
Any former boss that I've ever had can tell you that I doodle. Why do I doodle? Because if I'm looking at you, my brain's in 100 different directions, right? Like if I'm doodling, my brain has this level of distractedness that helps me focus on the task at hand. And I had teachers
that doodle.
Yeah, I do doodle. I'm a doodler.
You're a doodler?
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to kick you there.
So got off on a tangent there, but setting appropriate rewards along the way. This one I bring up every single day. Focus on the process, not the outcome. We are not in the outcomes business. I don't have any control over the results of anything.
Right.
I have control over the process by which I get there.
Sure.
I can't guarantee any outcomes for my clients. I can't guarantee any outcomes with diets, with training programs. There are no guarantees. But what I can control is whether or not I show up, whether or not I communicate, whether or not I prep my food, whether or not I read every day, whether or not I can control the process. So what we want to focus on is that process and not the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, I think about yesterday, that post I reposted from the Sober Bodybuilder.
Oh, yeah.
He goes through this piece and he talks about like, you didn't put the weight on overnight. You're not going to, if it took you 10 years to put the weight on, you're not going to lose it in 2 months.
12 weeks, yeah.
And he said basically, lack of patience with the process is the silent killer.
Yeah.
That's actually the silent killer. And I thought that was a really interesting, that was another thing. Mary Bell.
I was plenty patient with the 10 years to get there.
That's right. That's right.
I was super patient with that, but now I want it real quick.
That's right.
Especially for those in recovery, like we really struggle with that delayed gratification of how do I intentionally say, all right, 6 months, a year, 18 months from now.
How do I develop the distress tolerance to be able to walk through that? The emotional resilience. That's why we talked about that. The mental flexibility to allow ourselves to not have hard and fast rules.
Yeah.
When I asked Mary Dell to be on the podcast with me next week, I said, I really would love to get more thoughts about what you are thinking about contextually. Because I know that when you tell me the couple of sentences you said, I know what I think that means. And she said, I think that one of the biggest issues is we live in a world where everything is the before and after picture. She said, so it's rock bottom before and total utopia afterward, and that's bullshit. And she said it's bullshit, and everybody knows it's bullshit. Forgive my French, but
it's like, ta-da.
Yeah, and so that's one of the things. I had somebody come here one time. They were like, "Do you do before and after pictures?" I said, "Absolutely not." Now, if you want to chronicle your own process, go right ahead. But like for me, it's like you don't have more value in the after picture than you do in the before picture. Your value as a person is the same. Your worth as a person is the same. It's the process of allowing yourself to accept that and uncover it and celebrate it and embrace it. That's the real magic.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we talk about like this. Sometimes the scenic route is more enjoyable.
Always the scenic route is more enjoyable for me. Mm-hmm. And that's that patience piece of how can I be aggressive on the day-to-day stuff and then be patient? Like, how can I get really good about I'm going to move my body every day?
Yeah.
And how can I be really patient to give it 365 days before I'm expecting anything major?
Right.
So it's that I want to be aggressive in the short term and patient in the long term. Another thing is be prepared for detours. Mm-hmm. There's always going to be detours. I love this map example because whenever we're using Waze, it's like it never fails. I had a client tell me the other day, he's like, I'm coming from, out on the peak area, and he's like, I get to one of the cut throughs to, and Waze all of a sudden goes, make a right here, and he's like, it doesn't know what it's talking about, and sure enough, he's like 200
Gridlock.
feet later, it's like, just traffic. And so there's always going to be detours. How do we have regular assessments so we can decide, all right, let me take this. Maybe it'll take me a few longer minutes, but I can keep moving because I know about me, I don't like to sit in traffic.
Right.
So try to predict what some of them might be and what you would do in those circumstances.
Well, that's why we also spent 9 weeks, literally, and 6 really of the 9 weeks talking about the barriers.
Yeah.
Like so much of the first 2 steps, we talked about the mindset we bring to the table, the emotional flexibility, the mental flexibility, the emotional resilience. We talked about the fact that, and we have imposter syndrome, that we have these expectations, that our mind overestimates what can happen in the short term and underestimates what can happen in the long term. We talked about all of that stuff because detours happen. And sometimes, like, I think one of the points that I really wanted to come in and say is that, like, having a rigid plan that we're not willing to deviate from is just as dangerous as having no plan. Mm-hmm. Right.
We want to be bamboo. Really strong and flexible.
And take over everything in the backyard.
Yeah. And yep. All right. What else?
Timelines.
Yeah. Consider reasonable timelines. I say that every day too. We overestimate the short term, we underestimate the long term. Part of this process is getting a little bit better at paring down those short term expectations and being patient enough to allow ourselves the amazing accomplishments of what 6 months of a change behavior could do.
That's right.
Like, recovery was the first place that I ever, like, I remember hitting, and it's different for everybody, but I remember hitting like the 100-day mark and being like, I didn't think that I could feel this good again. Mm-hmm. And then I remember hitting the year mark and being like, that guy at 100 days was certifiable, insane, crazy. And I can't imagine feeling that bad. And that used to be good. Like,
right.
So by continuing to keep going, like, we reach new levels of better and better and better sometimes. And it's messy, and there's downs, and there's difficulties. But when we have reasonable timelines, like, I'll have clients come in and they're like, all right, I want to be in a bikini by summer. And it's like, let's talk about next summer.
Yeah.
It's March.
Right.
Anything that we could do to get you in the kind of shape that you want to be in for June is going to be so unhealthy that by October, you're going to be worse off than you are right now. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about reasonable expectations for this summer, and then let's talk about next year having that thing that you really want.
Yeah. Well, that's what you were talking about. Also, that kind of like goes to it. Attaining the goal that we want is sometimes less rewarding than we think. Mm-hmm. Actually, a lot of times is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and again, if you're in recovery, the way the brain works is every time for me, it doesn't matter what I tell myself on a scale of 1 to 10, this is going to feel an 8.
Yeah.
And it's always a 7 or a 6. It's always just under. So it's like more and more and more.
It's like Christmas morning.
Yeah.
When you come down all excited and you open up your presents, and then you're like, at the end of it, you're kind of like,
I can remember getting exactly what I asked for. Mm-hmm. The exact thing, same color, just exactly what my mind told me was going to feel like X, felt like B.
Yeah.
And it just this disconnect, and that's just how my brain works. I don't know what anybody else's brain is like, but that was true for me, and that's why substances were so difficult for me, because early on it was like, finally a 10.
Right.
It was better than I expected it to be. It released enough dopamine that it was like,
Right.
And so getting into a rhythm of life where we can prepare ourselves, like this camping trip is going to be awesome, and it's not going to be as awesome as my brain tells me it's going to be.
Right.
And how can I be in the middle there and be okay for it, be okay with it, and be present in the moment and enjoy it for what it is, rather than constantly wanting it to be better and longer and more enjoyable and less rain and more Dollywood.
You know, it makes me think about last year when we were going to Brevard and it was raining. I mean, it was pouring down rain. Yeah. We go and pull into the campsite, like they'd given us one, and it was literally like
underwater.
Yeah. And so we had to go back. Of course, there's nobody else in the campground. So we go back down and get one on higher ground, and we set up in the pouring rain. We had a little bit of a reprieve while we set up, but it's like literally pouring all. But I can remember we went over to Melody and Adam were in from Texas, and they were up there with family, and Gabriel and Madison came, and we were all up there, and we had dinner at their house, and we went and had gelato, and we said, let's go back to the campsite. And everybody's like, okay, yeah, let's do that. And we go back to the campsite, and it's raining, but we've got the whole setup. Everybody makes fun of us because we carry 2 tents, and we have all the lights.
Totally excessive.
Literally, we set up like we're moving in.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that I can remember that night we just sat there and had coffee and shot the shit and hung out with our friends, even though it was raining, and it was such an amazing night. We had such a good time, and everybody still talks about it. Like, that's when Gabriel was like, I want to pop up.
At first I thought where you were going with that was like it wasn't as good as expected, and I was like, that was a freaking awesome night.
No, but we, on the same token, because we kept going. My point is, because we kept going.
I see what you mean.
We did have this pocket of magic.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that's it. Overall, though, that 3-day period sucked.
Yeah.
Because it was pouring down rain the entire time, but
the sun came out again when we packed up. I remember that. And how ticked off. It was like perfect weather as we're loading up to go home after a 6-day trip of rain.
Yeah. That's also on the tail end of when we had been at Dollywood in the rain. But that pocket of magic, and I think that's the piece that we have to grab onto, is that's like recovery, right? Like, I think about recovery. We have those, we talked about last week, how you have those moments where you just wake up one day and you realize, I haven't thought about a drink in days. I can't remember the last time I thought about a drink, or the moment you kind of wake up a little bit, and I've been in burnout, and I can remember the first day I kind of took a deep breath and I looked around and I saw the kids in a different way, and I connected with you in a different way. And I can remember that feeling of like, that doesn't mean I don't have pockets. I mean, I still have so many of the signs of burnout. I'm still slogging through it. I'm not in the thick of it like I was, but I still have these pockets of it. And it's an interesting thing, but I think the other piece is that we want it to feel like this utopia. That's what our brain hopes for, and what we get is those pockets of peace, or that pockets of satisfaction, or those pockets of connection, a lot of times seemingly in the places where we're not going to think and we're going to get them. Like with weight loss, a lot of people don't feel the satisfaction they think they're going to get when they go into a dressing room, but they get it when they can get out and move their body, or they have that moment where they're not, they can get off the floor after playing with their kid, or get on the floor and play with their kid, or do those kinds of things. Like, it's those pockets. And I think that's the thing I wanted to kind of leave off with, is that's the reality of it. That's why we plan for accountability, is because we want to be honest with ourselves about where we're going, and be honest about ourselves. And then also we capture those periods of magic. Early sobriety for me sucked. I was bored. I was 22. I was going through all the brain stuff. I was just bored. Like, it's just boredom. But I had these moments where I actually had meaningful connections with people. And I can remember, like, I would feel it, and then I'd go, and then it would go away. And then I'd be like, how do I hang on to that? But that little tiny period of connection was enough to get me through until I got that next little period of connection, and I got that next little period of connection.
It's just like cocaine.
Yeah.
Seriously.
I know.
It's like you do a little, and it's like brief moment of like,
and
then immediately followed with, all right, I need to do that again. I need to experience that again.
Right. Well, and I will say this, like, do we have a minute?
Yeah, we've got a minute because I had something else I wanted to say too.
Okay, well then we'll do that. We're good.
Go ahead.
No.
What were you going to say?
Well, no, I was just going to say, also too, allowing ourselves to change the narrative and really challenge the narrative. Like, that's the piece of keep going. Mm-hmm. So I recently made, like, I think part of it's my burnout recovery story too. Like, when I was only sleeping 5 hours and my cortisol was at a 10 out of 10 every day, like, I literally could eat right and I could exercise, and I did struggle to lose weight. Like, taking care of myself better has left me in a period, like, and now I'm just it's kind of happening.
Yeah.
Something I've been desiring for a long time, but I've had some consistency that I haven't always had because the narrative is that I couldn't do those things. Right. And so, in those pockets for me aren't found in the places that I think they're going to be found. Right. Like, and I think that's an interesting one for me. Like, this morning, I realized that my endurance is a lot better.
Yeah.
And that's actually what brought me satisfaction.
Yeah.
Not walking into a dressing room and having a different size or doing anything like that. Those are really kind of, for me, they're superficial things now.
Yeah.
Like, I do that as a form and function because I have to. Like, I had to go buy some new workout pants because my workout pants were falling off. Like, I didn't necessarily find a lot of pleasure from my workout pants falling off, but I do get pleasure from the fact that I was able to walk in here today and I can discernibly see a difference in my endurance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or that I'm finally getting my strength back after a shoulder injury.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got a couple things on my mind, but since my birthday, I set a goal at my birthday, and we haven't talked about this, but of just losing weight. We're taking this trip to Utah next month, hopefully. And, I wanted to be less of me when I got there so that it would be easier to hike. And I thought that the peaks, I thought that the reward was going to be one thing, and the reward for me along this way has I haven't necessarily, I've lost the weight. I haven't necessarily, maintained all my strength, which is a little bit frustrating, but I would not, had you asked me in December, like, how much would you enjoy a good run? I would have told you you're crazy because I only run from the police, and
or
bears, or half-dead snakes that we come across. I will run so fast from a half-dead snake. We'll save that story for later. But the pure joy of feeling like athletic and a beast, like I can just run, and when I'm doing those metabolic kind of workouts now, I just feel like I feel amazing. And that was not what I was shooting for, but it is the reward that I'm enjoying right now. I follow a guy on social by the name of Mike Posner, and he's been doing a lot of these epic hikes. He walked across the United States last year, and he's been doing these like crazy, like this week he posted about a 20,000 foot hike in South America, somewhere I think in Patagonia area, I don't know. But he talked about, and this is a guy that like runs all the time and does all these epic hikes all the time. Like, he's in about as good of shape as a human being can be. And he was just sharing about how 3 hours before the peak, he wanted to give up, that he was to that point where it was like, it was miserable and the cloud cover was horrible and he felt bad. And he's at that point, probably 18,000 feet. So he's having a hard time breathing, and his coach is with him and is like, let's just keep going. And that's his phrase. And the pictures that he got from the top of a 20,000 foot, and maybe they stayed there 20 minutes, 30 minutes. They probably spent 8 to 12 hours hiking that in order to accomplish that one thing. And it was probably grueling and horrible, and he wanted to turn around at several points. But all of that is worth that view.
Sure.
Like, I would kill to be able to experience that view from above the clouds, 20,000 feet above sea level. And so it's just this reminder of, it's going to be difficult. It's going to hurt. There's going to be detours. But that the payoff isn't this, we don't live at the top of the mountain. We don't get to experience that all the time. As a matter of fact, if we did, we wouldn't enjoy the view.
That's right.
It's that brief moment in time where we get to the top and it's like, this is amazing. And then we got to climb back down. That was his first statement. He's like, we're only halfway. You know, now I got to go down this thing. And so part of it being difficult is what makes that rest period at the top where you can just take a deep breath and enjoy the fruits of the labor, so much more worth it.
Yeah.
It's like there's no better sandwich than at the top of Table Rock kind of a thing. Like, there just isn't.
Right.
So we're running out of time. Hopefully that was useful. In summary, create a plan, program, or map to reach your goals. Make sure you write it down. Share it with somebody else. Assess it daily and weekly. Keep going even though there are detours and it's going to be difficult, because the payoff will be there. The scenic route and the longer route is oftentimes more enjoyable.
Yeah.
And attaining the goal might be less rewarding than you think overall, but there will be moments that are absolutely worth it.
That's right.
Anything else that you wanted to share?
No, that's good.
I think that's number 10 in the books. You can follow us at colewellness.com. Julie has her own blog now, so check that out on Facebook.
Yeah.
Right? What else? All
Go
forms
Lady
of social media.
Gamecocks.
I don't know anything about baseball, but go basketball. There we go.
Go Lady Gamecocks.
Go what she said. Follow us on all forms of social: Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We've got blog posts up every week. We've got podcasts up every week. You can check that out on our website. You can email us at info@colewellness.com. Thank you for listening. Next week, we've got our first guest.
Yes.
The week after that, we'll have another guest.
Yeah. Tune in for Mary Dell Hayes next week. And then, is it for sure, Darren?
Yep.
Oh, Darren
I think, that's the plan.
Darren Woodleaf.
Dr. Darren Woodleaf.
That's right. Dr. Darren.
Yes.
Dun, dun,
Dun,
dun.
dun, dun. And then after that, probably a new series. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Have a great week.
Thanks, everybody.